Religion had a very important place in the life of ancient Egyptians. Their art was the messenger of religion. Literature and philosophy were full of religious sentiments. The state system was theocratic, and the purpose of economic organization was to help in the development of religious institutions and the construction of religious monuments. For this reason, the Greeks considered them the most religious people in the world. The Egyptians were polytheists from ancient times. Most of their gods were divinization of natural forces. They considered not only the sun, which showers life on the earth with its light, the moon, which delights people by taking away the darkness of the night, the Nile, which revives the fertility of the earth with its floods every year, the earth, which gives birth to infinite treasures from its womb, and the sky, which shelters infinite stars in its infinite expanse, but also the waterfalls, mountains, animals and birds, creepers, trees, and various vegetation to be endowed with divine power. Among these, the sun and the Nile were the most important. They imagined the moon as Sin, the god of knowledge and time. The center of its worship was the city of Shmun, also known as Hermopolis. They considered the earth to be a god named Keb, and the sky to be a goddess named Nut, or a divine cow, named Hathor. The main god of Memphis, Ptah, was not a deification of any natural power, but was the patron of arts and artists. Its chief priest often got the position of the chief artist of the pharaoh. The Egyptians often imagined their gods in the form of humans or animals and birds, or in mixed forms. They considered many animals and birds like bull, lynx, cow, swan, crocodile, goat, sheep, cat, dog and snake as symbols of various gods. But according to Breasted in the ancient kingdom era, animal worship did not get the place in their religion which it got in the later eras, when the religious sentiment got distorted. Still, there is no doubt that their pantheon was very large. The total number of their gods and goddesses must have been more than 2,000. Such a large pantheon was not imagined in any other country in the world except India and Rome. Complete harmony was never established at the national level in the religious ideas of the Egyptians, although after the establishment of the United States, an attempt was made to establish the identity of gods that seemed similar, for example, the different forms of the sun. Yet there was often a contradiction in the ideas and stories associated with them. But they were capable of believing in mutually contradictory ideas simultaneously. The best proof of this is their imaginations about the origin and shape of the world. At the philosophical level, in the work called Memphite Drama, divine intelligence has been said to be the reason for the origin of the world. But mythological stories that interested Janman were also not unknown. In one story, the world is considered as a divine cow standing on the earth, god Keb, whose belly is the sky studded with stars and which is being supported by the wind god Shu. According to another story, when there was only the primeval sea in place of the world, a divine egg appeared. From it, the sun god was born. This form of the sun is called Atum. From it, the air god Shu and his sister wife Teshnet were born, and from them, the earth god Keb and the sky goddess Nut. Nut and Keb were the parents of brothers named Geotipta, and Set and sisters named Isis and Nephthys. In due course, Shu put his feet on the face down Keb and lifted Nut so high that Nut's body started looking like a dome over Cheb. These 9 gods, including the sun god, were considered prominent in Egypt. Among them, the sun and Osiris had the highest prestige. Sun was worshipped in different names and forms in almost all parts of Egypt. In northern Egypt, the main center of his worship was a place called On, or Heliopolis of the Greeks. Here he was called Re, and was imagined as an old man moving towards the west. In Thebes, his name was Amun, In southern Egypt, his main center was a place called Edfu. There he was worshipped as Shyam under the name Horus. After the establishment of the United Kingdom, the unity of these different forms of the sun was considered, and his combined name Amun-Re proved to be the most popular. In the ancient kingdom era, he was considered the supreme god. His symbol, the winged sun wheel, was the royal emblem of Egypt. According to the belief of the millennia, he was the first to rule as Pharaoh. Once, humans conspired against him. Enraged by this, he sent a goddess called Hathor to destroy mankind, but later he repented, and with his efforts he stopped Hathor in the middle. Later, the divine cow took him on its back, so that he could stay away from ungrateful humans. Since then, he travels in the sky on a divine boat and keeps on showering his light in the form of nectar on the earth. When the sun god Re became celestial, his representatives, the pharaohs, started ruling on the earth. Among them, the first place has been given to Osiris. Although at some places he has been called the son of the sun, however, basically he seems to be the deification of the Nile River, the fertility power of the earth, and greenery. The original center of his worship was Didu, situated in the region near the mouth, but later Abydos became more famous. As a king, he proved to be very charitable and just. He got a lot of help in governance from his sister and wife Ipsit. He taught mankind agriculture, law and arts, but his evil brother Set treacherously murdered him. Isis collected the pieces of her husband's dead body, and with the help of the jackal-faced god Anubis, she made preparations to bury him. But due to the effect of the spells he cast on Osiris's dead body, he was revived. Although after that he was no longer capable of living a terrestrial life, yet he became the lord of the underworld. After his revival, Isis gave birth to a son named Horus. She brought him up secretly in the estuary region. After attaining youth, Horus defeated Set after a fierce struggle and took revenge for the insult and murder of his father. Set appealed against Horus in the assembly of gods, but Horus was victorious there too. Perhaps this Osiris legend was basically a symbolic description of the death of the Nile and the vegetation world every year in the summer season, and their rebirth when the floods came. Being based on events closely related to the life of the Egyptians, it soon became very popular. They saw a glimpse of their life and hopes in it and got the message of immortality. Just as Osiris died and was resurrected, similarly everyone can be resurrected. This feeling gradually became stronger, and this story became a symbol of victory of life over death, hope over despair, justice over injustice, and truth over immortality. Secondly, the characters of this story presented the high ideals of life in the concrete form to the Egyptians, and the Egyptians considered the character of Osiris as a just and benevolent king, Isis as a wife who conquered death with the power of love, and a mother who nurtured her children by enduring many hardships, and Horus as a devoted son, as exemplary for themselves. The Meli considered their temples as the house of God, so they built them in the same way as their houses. In the pyramidal-era temples, there was an open courtyard in the front. Behind it was a large pillared chamber, and behind it were small chambers used as storerooms. In the middle of these small chambers, there was a sanctum sanctorum in which a wooden idol, usually 1 to 6 feet high, was installed. It was decorated with gold, silver, and precious stones. The main parts of the worship of the deity were to offer the best food, drink, and clothes to the idol, and to satisfy it with singing and playing. The expenditure of the temples depended on the income of the land granted by the state, food grains, wine, honey, and oil, etc., received from the treasury and donations given by the worshippers. The material offered to the deity was used by the priests, but on special occasions prasad was also distributed among ordinary worshippers. The dates mentioned in the Devakyans were celebrated with special enthusiasm. In the same way as Hindus celebrate Sri Krishna Janmashtami, Sri Ram Navami, and Vijayadashami, etc. Pharaoh, the only official servant of the deity among the priest class. In theory, he had the sole right to worship all the gods, but he could not be present in all the temples at the same time. So in practice, he had to entrust this duty to his assistant priests. There were more than one priest in every important temple in Egypt. Their chief was not only responsible for conducting the worship ritually, but also for the care of the temple property and commanding the army during war. Many temples had devadasis. Their duties were to sing, play instruments, and dance in front of the deity. The priests enjoyed their position hereditarily, if not in theory. They lived in the temple, sustained themselves from their income, and were free from taxes, forced labor, and compulsory military service. Their prestige increased greatly due to the immense wealth collected in the temples, independent military power, and their privileges. The priests of Memphis and Heliopolis were particularly powerful. Like literature, there was no opportunity for the development of pure science in Egypt. The Egyptians were interested only in those areas of science which were needed in practical life, but despite their limited curiosity, they achieved amazing success in some areas. For example, they had discovered the difference between planets and constellations, and with the help of their primitive instruments, they had made a map of the sky by estimating the position of the major constellations correctly. The invention of the solar calendar was their important success, but yet they could not progress beyond this. For example, they were always unsuccessful in finding the causes of eclipses. Similarly, the main rules of mathematics, addition, subtraction, and division, had been invented long ago to meet the needs of business and administration, but they remained unfamiliar with multiplication till the end. They used to manage it with addition. They were also unfamiliar with zero and the decimal method. In their numeral system, there was a symbol for numbers from 1 to 6, which was written 1, 2, 3, 6 times to write numbers up to 6. The second symbol was for 10. By writing it 1, 2, 3, 6 times, numbers 10, 20, 30, 60 were written. Similarly, numbers in hundreds and thousands were written with the help of fixed symbols for 101,000. Unfamiliarity with the decimal system made the number symbols long. He had difficulty with fractions. For example, he could write 1/2 and 1/4, but wrote 3/4 as 1/2 plus 1/4. He had learnt to solve elementary problems of algebra and geometry, but he experienced difficulty in finding the area of a trapezoid. He had achieved considerable success in finding the area of a circle, hemisphere, and cylinder. He was exceptionally skilled in making the base plan of buildings. His artisans were familiar with the use of columns and arches. He had also made considerable progress in medicine. Physicians had emerged as a class, and the pharaoh's physician was a high official. Some of their prescriptions were very useful and popular in later times. But due to superstitions and popularity of exorcists, not much progress could be made in this field. They tried to provide stability to the bodies of their dead by applying various types of medicines, but despite this, they were not very familiar with the human anatomy. They were also completely ignorant of physics and chemistry.